What is really up to us when it comes to actions? If we were to rank the most popular quotes from the Stoic writings, this text from Epictetus's Enchiridion, chapter 1, would probably be on the podium, or at least near it. Of things, some are in our power, and others are not. In our power are opinion, movement toward a thing, desire, aversion, turning from a thing. And in a word, whatever are our own acts, not in our power are the body, property, reputation, offices, magisterial power, and in a word, whatever are not our own acts. This famous piece of text refers to the dichotomy of control, or, as some call it, Stoic Fork. We should focus on what we can control and let go of the rest. This is the pillar of Stoic philosophy, an empowering and liberating idea. What follows is that letting go of the rest also means that we should not worry about the uncontrollable. It cannot reduce our happiness, or rather eudaimonia, as this term has much deeper meaning. And since we cannot control it, there is no reason to lose sleep because of it. Easier said than done, of course. That is why Stoicism is a lifelong practice. An interesting problem arises when we pose an additional question. What about action? Are our actions under our control? This idea is often mentioned in the modern texts on Stoicism. It was also presented during some of the talks at the Stoicon conference held this year in Athens, October 5, 2019. And it seems quite convincing. We decide what to do, and therefore our actions are up to us. But when we read Epictetus once more, we see that he does not mention action, but only opinion, movement toward a thing, desire, aversion, turning from a thing, and in a word, whatever are our own acts. One could argue that moving towards or away from a thing is action-like, but when you look at the whole context, it is rather the content of our impressions, referring to the thing we would like to have or like to avoid. In this article, I would like to look more closely at the idea of action being up to us. By 1, separating action into 2 main components, and 2, aiming at building the connection between Stoicism, both components of action, and cognitive psychology, in the form of the concept of perspective memory. What do I mean by the 2 components? I would argue that we can separate action into A, intention, willingness to act, and B, the act itself, i.e., doing the thing we intended. From this perspective, intention is purely a psychological event. It happens in our mind. There are usually no external indicators that an intention has been created. We can communicate it by saying, for example, I plan to do this and that, but it is not necessary. Then we have the act itself, the fulfillment of the intention. It might happen in the external world, going to the store, reading a book, or in our minds, thinking about what to say during my next lecture. The bottom line is, however, that we have an intention, and then we act based on this intention. An interesting way to classify intention from a psychological perspective comes from the work of cognitive psychologists Kvavilashvili and Ellis. She divides intention into immediate and delayed. An immediate intention is the one that is followed by action immediately after its creation. I see a sandwich, I think I will eat it, and, without delay, I consume the sandwich. On the other hand, in the case of delayed intention, some time elapses between the creation of the intention and the act. It is usually because there is no possibility to complete the intention immediately. At the moment I am sitting at the airport in Athens planning my activities for tomorrow. I'd like to meet my student, but that needs to wait, as she is not here, and the meeting will happen, fate permitting, tomorrow at 15:30. This sort of psychological event, creating an intention and waiting for a chance to fulfill it, is known as prospective memory, PM. Studies show that most of the memory failures are in fact PM failures. That is, we forgot not who we are, where we live, etc. But rather, we forgot to do something at the right time. The case of a meeting with a student could be seen as an example of time-based PM, intention to be fulfilled after some time has elapsed. We also talk about event-based PM. Most commonly cited example is giving a message to a colleague when I see him. Seeing my colleague is the event that activates the intention. As all of us know, we can fail at both types of PM. Forget about the meeting, or see a colleague, talk to him even, but forget to give the message. Before we go back to Stoicism and Epictetus, it is useful to show briefly a process-based view of prospective memory. It is understood as a series of steps. First, we create an intention. That is, we decide that we would like to do something. This something may be more or less specific. This is intention creation. Then, as we talk about delayed intentions, there is a period of waiting before the plan can be put to action. This is intention retention. Then we have intention activation. We are in the right circumstances to fulfill the plan. And here is when the uncertainty starts. What about actually doing the intended thing? Connecting the first passage from Enchiridion with the psychological theory of prospective memory, we can say with conviction that creating an intention, whether immediate or delayed, is in our power. Intention and willingness to act. We control desires and aversion, so this mental part of the process is up to us. But we can create the plan, keep it in our memory, have every intention to execute it, and still fail. Why? Let's look at some potential obstacles. First and foremost, external conditions may prevent us from acting. The colleague we want to meet may not be at the university. The student may have a cold and cancel the meeting. There could be a powerful storm, thank you Zeus, and electricity may go out, which prevents us from watching a Champions League match. Our laptop can malfunction, and we are not able to send an important email, and so on and so forth. This is where the reserve clause, e.g., fate permitting, comes into play. We state that we will do something if the circumstances allow us. And from this perspective, the action is not up to us. Remember that Stoics had a 0-1 view of the matter. If something is not fully up to us, it is simply not up to us. This is also a perspective on prospective memory that I am fond of. I liked it even before I became an aspiring Stoic. That there is a gap between intention and action, and various factors may prevent us from doing what we planned. Such factors can be external, examples listed above, but also internal. And this last category may be divided into volitional and non-volitional. How does that work? Volitional will, in this context, mean a conscious decision to cancel the planned action. We may decide that we do not want to meet the student, or that the message we wanted to give to our colleague is not important. Or, to be a little dramatic, we can serve as a witness during the trial of a powerful criminal. And when sitting on the stand, we can decide that we will not share what we know. This last example is rather a non-Stoic behavior, as we should not be afraid of dying at the hands of criminals' minions. But remember, Stoicism is a process. Jokes aside, this type of intention-disrupting event is volitional, internal, and so it is up to us. But what about the non-volitional and internal? Does something like this exist? Sure it does. You experienced it every time you forgot to make a phone call, give a message, put something at the shop, or take your business cards with you to a Stoicon conference. As I mentioned above, most memory failures are prospective memory failures. We forget even though we wanted to do something. It has a lot to do with our attention. We can become distracted, focus on something else, etc. Can we control the internal and non-volitional? To some extent, which in the Stoics' view means no, we can strive to train our focus, plan better, reduce distractions, but there is no guarantee that in every instance we will remember to execute our intentions. In this view, our attention and focus is not up to us. Scary thought. Coming back to the initial question regarding actions, we can respond that they are not up to us. The intentions and plans are, but not the execution. In most cases, if nothing prevents us, action follows intention. But if we want to stick closely to Stoic writings, we must state that our actions are not fully up to us. This sounds scary in our action-oriented world, but thinking about it for a moment, especially the non-volitional internal obstacles, we can be more compassionate towards ourselves. Forgetting to do something is also not under our control, but we can and should try to reduce the risk. The research on prospective memory suggests that we can increase its accuracy. For example, by building more complex intentions, i.e., planning better. Complex plans are remembered better, and as a result, we are reducing the risk of a non-volitional internal omission. Also, and this is probably the first time such connection is made, Stoic exercises, such as various versions of Praemeditatio Malorum, can be beneficial when it comes to intentions and prospective memory. And I do not necessarily mean thinking about possible serious illness, but even listing things that can go wrong when we want to, let's say, go on vacation. By predicting what can go wrong, we are at the same time making our plan more complex and more likely to be remembered when the time comes. The job of prospective memory is to remind us of our plans at the right time. What can a Stoic or any other person do? Well, we should not be discouraged. Even if external or internal events stop us, we can take a step back, evaluate our options, and create new intentions. So we can sum up by saying the Stoics strive to create and fulfill good intentions according to nature, and if sometimes they are derailed by various events, they should use virtues of wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice to create a new path and, fate permitting, achieve the goal. Remembering, though, that practicing virtue is the only real goal. But when it comes to the dichotomy of control, intentions and willingness to act are the key, not the actions themselves.